On this episode of The Career Musician, we have Andy Wood, shredder guitar extraordinaire. Andy has toured with the likes of Gary Allan, Low Cash, Rascal Flatts, Scott Stapp, and Sebastian Bach. Looking for an outlet for styles other than rock, Andy is known for blurring the lines of preconceived genres and is also a founding member of the rock group Down From Up, and they have toured with Seven Dust, Drowning Pool, and 10 Years. Andy is also the founder and host of the Woodshed Guitar Experience, which is a guitar camp featuring some of the planet's craziest shredders that you do not want to miss, so be sure to check that out as well. Also, this episode with Andy is on YouTube with the actual Zoom video, so you can see him noodling around on his guitar as we talk, and we have a little jam feature at the end. Without further ado, this is Andy Wood on the Career Musician Podcast.
Yeah, dude, I dig it.
Andy Wood, welcome to the Career Musician Podcast. Woo!
What up, Nomad?
All right. You know, I was thinking about it, bro. We met in 2013, I want to say.
I don't know the year, but I know the location.
The Guitar Summit.
Guitar Summit, yeah.
That's right. Kevin Wilson. Big shout out to Kevin Wilson and his vision.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's where I met you and met Lettieri.
That's right.
Sharky and all that crowd, man.
Man, that is awesome. Yes, you know what? I'm so glad you mentioned that. We got to get Lettieri and Sharky on the show as well, so that'll be great.
Yeah, dude. I'm doing we're doing my camp at the end of the month, and Lettieri's going to be on that. So we've done a lot of gigs together. We've done some of my Elements of Sound shows, and those have been real fun. With we've had Paul Gilbert on one, we've had Andy Timmons on several, so no shortage of firepower on those gigs.
Dude, well, I am just a spectator in those circles, man. You know, I mean, the guitar shreddery that you're talking about is like, whew, that's it just fretboards ablaze, like you said.
Love it, dude. Yeah, man.
So let's start off with that because it's perfect. It's coming up soon, your camp. So tell us about the Woodshed, I'm sorry. You go.
Oh, yeah, I mean, you nailed it, dude. You nailed it. So the camp is called the Woodshed Guitar Experience. Yep. We do it in Lake Francis, Tennessee, which is this beautiful lakefront, beachfront property, campground, a whole deal. And it's, I say camping, but it's like glamping. You know, it's like camping with Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? It's like no sleeping bags, no tents or anything like that. But it's 3-day event. I like to, like when the guy that owns the property came to me about maybe using my brand and stuff to partner and do it together, the one stipulation that I said was I get to pick the artist. Like I get to put the bids in on who we want. Like and that you do give me that and then we're good. So the thing that I wanted was really, man, I wanted to build the event and the type of roster that I would want to go to. You know, just build it from a fan's point of view because, I mean, you and I think everyone that plays the guitar professionally still is a fan. Like we still love it, right? So I wanted to just be like, yo, man, Brent Mason, Robben Ford, Timmons, Lettieri, Larry Basilio, Greg Koch, Tyler Larson, whose Music is Win, is going to come to a seminar. And, man, you know, like last year we had Joe Bonamassa. And it's just like I wanted the event to where someone couldn't say, oh, it's a country guitar camp. Oh, it's a jazz guitar camp. Oh, it's a shred guitar retreat. Like, I want to be like, hey, man, this is for music lovers. Like, I start off all of my videos, everything on my channel is hello music lovers, not hello metal lovers, not hello jazz lovers, like music. Like, I have two genres, the good and the bad. There's my genres of music, you know?
I love that, the good and the bad. That is awesome.
Yeah, there's the two genres. And for me, it's like I just wanted to build that kind of event. We, you know, some of the side things. Of course, it's what you expect. It's 3 days of lessons, seminars, jamming, concerts. We do a full-blown concert. We fly a line array and the whole deal at the end of the week, and everybody plays their, you know, 3 of their signature tunes. So, you know, it's like, yeah, of course you get Brent Mason, you want him to play Hot Wired. You know, it's like everybody like plays their stuff.
Right.
And it's cool. And we have a great house band. Last year we had Jim Riley, Adam Nitty, and Travis Toy. And this year we've got Jim Riley, Travis Toy, and Daniel Kimbrough. Daniel plays with Jerry Douglas and some of that crowd. So Like it's like as a fan, I want the rhythm section to be just as
Burning as the
incredible
cat.
as like
Yeah.
it's like everybody's a hero, you know what I mean?
I
And
love
then
that.
on the property, of course, we have some of that like down home kind of vibe. We've got like jet skis and boats and fishing and ropes courses and all that stuff too. So it's like summer camp for guitar lovers, you know?
Wow.
That's
But it's
August 26, 27, 28. Registration's open. It's extremely limited. It's not the kind of thing that's going to be 200-300 people. Like we limit it at 100 people. That's it. Like, yeah, we want it to be like, I mean, you and I know it's like when you go to VIP events, you're lucky to get 20 minutes with 300 or 400 other people. You know what I mean? Like when you go to concerts or whatever. This is like, man, you come to our thing and you get the experience. Like, well, I want to give you a weekend of hanging out and being able to just hang out with the artists. Like that's the magic to me, you know, kind of that Disney perspective, you know?
I love it. I love it. Yes. Oh. Oh, this is crazy. I suck at this game. My wife makes fun of me all the time.
It's Right Now by Van Halen.
Right Now by Van Halen.
I'm doing it on my Woodshed episode this week, and I've been messing around with like this fingerstyle arrangement. I do a Patreon, and on my Patreon, one of the things that the higher tiers get you is a weekly live Zoom masterclass. And in that masterclass, there's Q&A and, talking about gear and tone. And this week somebody was like, how do you think about chord melody? And one of the number one questions I get with anything is, how do you practice this? What exercises do you use for right hand? And I always default down to, man, I never did exercises. I learned by learning songs. And
Okay, hold on. You got to pause that. You got to say that again because that is crucial.
Yeah.
You never did exercises.
Never. So
Okay, but here's the thing. Hold on, because we have to demystify this. Now, listeners, I don't care if you're a guitar player, a drummer, a piano player, a flutist. I don't care what instrument you play. This is very important because this is a paradigm shift for many of us. I was always taught if you want speed and dexterity and prowess overall, you have to play exercises.
Never.
So I just really want to park here for a minute. So now please expound.
Okay, so as a kid, we'll come back to the Patreon thing. Basically, I had a guy this week saying, how do you think about chord melody? And to me, it's all about finding a tune that you love already. Just find a song that you love, right? And you take the melody line or the bass line, for instance. Another one that I love is right? And you know that from... So like on the vocal line, right? Another one would be like, I like Bob Seger, so I would take, and you think about the melody line. It's really like you're thinking about the music and not the guitar part, right? So I used Right Now as an example. I said one of my favorite songs Right Now. Let's just use it as an example. So I transcribed the arpeggios in the class. And like there's nobody I've seen on YouTube like playing that piano intro on guitar or whatever. So I did the transcription for the class, and now I'm going to put that on Woodshed, and the whole Woodshed episode this week is going to be about practicing musicality. Okay, now jump into what you were talking about. I never learned by playing exercises. One of the number one things I get asked about a lot is right hand technique.
I hate you. Stop it.
Or the cross picking thing. I get asked about that a lot. Those kind of things. So I got good at playing right hand technique, but playing mandolin as a kid, and I never learned exercises. I learned tunes. Like I was always playing fiddle tunes with my granddad, And my granddad would play things like Beaumont Rag. Or like Whiskey Before Breakfast or Billy in the Low Ground. So my right hand technique got good at the challenge that presents itself to most guitar players, which is jumping from outside picking to inside picking and switching back and forth. That's really where the problem is. And that's why most guitar players love things to be 2 notes per string the whole time. Or they love it to be 3 notes per string the whole time and never shift. So one of the first things I do, I'm like, hey man, when you look at a fiddle tune, like Beaumont Rag, you're constantly switching the amount of notes per string. You know, like all of those fiddle tunes have that. Like,
okay, so pause,
those kind of licks too.
pause right there.
Yeah.
Pause right there, because I would say 5 years ago, maybe before you had all of this online content like up and running so beautifully as you do now. I think I texted you or called you and said, Andy, how do I play, mandolin? Fiddle, bluegrass, flat picking. I said, what do I need to study for that? And you were like, oh man, I'll jump on. We never got around to it, but you did.
The answer is every fiddle tune from Kenny Baker or but Bobby, like who all was in that scene, like Chubby Wise. It's basically every fiddle player that played with Bill Monroe. Bill Monroe's the father of bluegrass. Flatt and Scruggs, any fiddle player that worked with them. And now out of the, the modern, really hot new cats, well, I mean, I'm saying new as in the past 30, 40 years, is like, Mark O'Connor, Stuart Duncan, Aubrey Haney is a freak, man. Like, these are the cats that took fiddle to the next level. And learning those fiddle tunes, those traditional fiddle tunes that were on those Bill Monroe records, that's where I learned alternate picking. And then I'm a big banjo fan. So like learning Bela Fleck style things on the guitar, like learning, there was a Don Reno tune, Dixie Breakdown. Like all of those kind of banjo-y rolls.
Love it.
Like learning all those banjo-y kind of things really helped me develop my right hand technique to where, like, when I did discover things like Steve Morse, those type of licks weren't as weren't as impossible. So like it's like all of that stuff was built from learning banjo stuff, and it's one thing that I always talk about too is like, again, it's scoping out, getting away from just guitar and putting your fingers down first and then trying to let your ears catch up.
Yeah.
Learn stuff from other instruments,
So
so bluegrass, like all of that perspective come from bluegrass. So when I went to other genres, the perspective stayed the same. So I listened to like Pavarotti or I listened to Hans Zimmer.
Right.
And I'm trying to learn melody lines that aren't played on this.
So, okay, I love that. I love that approach. I ascribe to that same theory of listen to everything else but guitar, right?
Yeah, right.
and especially melody. So I love that. So you're saying you didn't practice exercises. I love that too. So you just really cut your teeth on these standard bluegrass tunes. You really nailed flat picking, cross picking, and even some banjo type techniques. How often, 2 questions, this is a 2-part question.
Mm-hmm.
How often did you practice from the time you really started to get serious, to really become a professional career musician? And how much time do you practice now?
Yeah.
you know.
I'm going to give you the cliche answer that everybody says. I don't practice.
Yeah.
I
See?
just play the music. Like, I just sit down and I look at it. Like, I'm a big video gamer too. You play enough games, specifically fighting games or first-person shooters or whatever, you innately get better at it because you like to do it and you're just playing it a lot, right? Guitar and music is like that for me. Like, it's playing the guitar. It's not working the guitar. It's not practicing the guitar. I did go to school at UT for a couple of years, a year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, can't remember, for jazz. And I still learn. Practicing and learning aren't the same thing, in my opinion. Learning and playing the guitar is the thing. So, like, if I'm working on something, and I don't know what that might be off the top of my head, but like the Van Halen thing, like, of course I'm gonna sit and in a lot of people's perspective, it would be practicing, but I am actually listening. I'm trying to listen at, do I want to play it here? Or do I want to play it here? Or I want to play it here? Yeah. Like like those are the things that I fall down the rabbit hole on, and I'm having fun. It's become a game to me. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
so like the practice aspect in the traditional mindset
Yeah.
falls into this lane. Here, I'll give you an example. I just did the John Petrucci thing at the camp, right? And I was one of the artists out there. I had a lot of guys in the room that were like, man, I'm practicing these modes and scales 3 hours a day, and I'm not seeing any improvement. And I'm like, well, you're never practicing creativity. You're never playing music. It's essentially like trying to memorize every word in Webster's dictionary and then thinking that's going to allow you to speak English. Like, you may have all of the tools, but if you're not forming sentences, and that's how people become bilingual, by just moving to another country. How'd you learn to speak German? Well, I've lived here for 6 years. And so I'm surrounded by hearing it.
That's
another common misconception is people are like, what do I need to know to practice country guitar and telly chicken picking licks? I love those licks that you do. I'm like, well, how much telly chicken picking are you listening to? Who are your top 8 favorite telly chicken pickers? And if you don't know 2, there's your problem. You're not a mechanic. There's not a thing that you can do to absorb the music if you aren't listening to it.
I love that, and you have to listen. Yeah, and that's the first thing that they teach you in jazz when you're studying jazz. If you're not listening to jazz 24/7, you can't
play jazz.
You're not going to ingest it. Yeah.
Dude, that goes to metal. Like one of my friends is Mark Lewis, and he produces a lot of really big metal records. I mean, like Cannibal Corpse, like big records. And metal and jazz, whichever language of music you choose to speak, it all requires the same basic fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
You have to absorb the music. You have to listen to it. You can't like take a guy that knows every Charlie Parker tune on the planet, and he spends every Sunday, and you say, okay, man, you can obviously play your butt off. You got all this technique. You got all this harmonic knowledge. Okay, I need you to go in. We're going to do this Metallica tribute record, and you're going to do Sad But True. If he doesn't listen to, it's gonna sound not great.
That sounds
and that's an understatement. You know what I mean? And you can invert that. You can take the telly guy, and if he's never listened to Parker, and you say we're gonna play Scrapple the Apple or whatever, it's gonna tank. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. You have to listen to whatever it is. And a lot of people ask me a lot, how do you get good at a lot of different genres? I was like, I just love a lot of different music.
Yes.
I just love to listen to music. And inspiration never really turns off when I'm walking through Disney World at a theme park. Like I went to Disneyland while I was out there in California. It's like I'm hearing all this awesome music, and like I mean, I haven't ever tried to play that, but I'm pulling it from memory because it's the ears, right? Like that's the thing. And when I watch movies, if the music sucks, that equates to the movie not being any good. You know what I mean? It's like those Hans Zimmer soundtracks, those Danny Elfman is a massive influence. Like I love Danny Elfman's work. And like that has nothing to do with being a guitar player, but it has to do with listening. And then when you go to play guitar and you hear those chord changes that he uses, it's like really cool stuff.
A lot of parallel shifts there, yeah.
Yeah, and it makes it fun. Again, it goes back to like when I go to put this on guitar, it now becomes fun. Video game music, anything. Like I said, I listen to so much different music all the time, and maybe that's a problem. I'm just going down the buffet and not committing to anything. I'm just like
that's
from everything.
That's great. And it's funny you mentioned Danny Elfman. I worked with him on Men in Black 3. I played guitar on that score, and his studio is out here in LA. And when you go to his studio, it reflects exactly what you're saying. Really, any major composer, like I'm the same way, and I'm sure you are too. We just have instruments from all over, every kind of instrument you can imagine. And when you go to Danny's studio, he has giant taiko drums, those big, drums from the islands down there in the Pacific, and he has these weird artifacts and instruments that you're just like, holy crap, where is this from? And again, it's because that eclectic palette. You want to take everything in, and then you
want to hear it. Like you see that in the room, you're like,
exactly.
Can I get that?
Can I play that?
Can I just hit it? Like that's the joy that I think gets lost because of the way we guitar players, specific to us. I think a lot of time our downfall is we're so eager to put our hands on the instrument and play. People are like, man, I just feel like I'm keep on repeating myself. I'm playing the same licks over and over. I'm like, well, man, like when you go to play the guitar, have you got a key in mind before you put your hands down? Have you got a time signature in mind before you put your hands down? Have you decided is your seventh going to be, major 7 or dominant 7? Like, make these decisions before you touch the guitar.
Yeah.
And then that will lead you to a new place. When you say, hey man, I play rock licks in 4/4 and it's like a pentatonic stuff, I'm like, okay, let's play an E flat. Now you have a major 7, it's like, and now you're forced to do different things because it's all of a sudden none of the things that you were doing fit with this thing.
That's
and you're
right.
forced to listen to something else.
I love that. And I love that. Now, that's a great example. I do that sometimes too. You do that, and then you figure out, like, you slightly brushed up against the open E, right? So normally you would think, well, how that doesn't work. But how about now you figure out a way to make it work? So you go, and then you go, right? And then you keep your middle tone of G, right? And you're like, so love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it goes back to like just listening, like taking the time to listen and let the music come from here first and not these first. Right. And usually the things that you're looking for, and this ties into the technique thing. I got like fast and clean at guitar playing as a byproduct of what I initially wanted to do, which was I just wanted to be precise and I wanted to get a good tone. Like I wanted the guitar to innately resonate well when I play. And it sound good. And as a byproduct, working through different things, that made me like cleaner. And it's almost like the speed became a byproduct. The speed became a byproduct of being in control. Mm-hmm. Control is the most important thing. Going fast will happen innately. It's very much like race car drivers, right?
Right.
Like the speed's a byproduct of just being in control of the movements.
I love that. Love that. Okay. All right. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is how the man practices. He doesn't practice exercises, and he doesn't practice at all. He listens and he plays. I love it. I love it. And you know what? I again, can relate to that. People ask me, do you practice? Man, to be honest with you, I haven't sat down and practiced in years.
Right?
I don't even remember what that's like. So
that's like, when I think of practice, I think of the first times you get a guitar and you can't make the F chord.
Yeah.
Like that is practice. Like once your hands can become, because essentially these are the hammers, like in a piano.
Yeah, your fingers.
Like, this is the hammers. This is what's actually touching the string. Once you can fret the strings, the practice is the practice is done. It's now time to figure out where they go and what decisions you're gonna make. Now it's time to let the creative control come into play. And I think that's how you get guys that become freakishly great players and reinvent the entire world and not really know what they're doing. Eddie Van Halen. He's one of my biggest influence. He might be, he's in my top 3 most influential of all time, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, he wasn't super aware of everything that he was doing, but it's like this was just cranked up to 1 million. And he just was listening all the time and created things that I mean, I think he knew a little bit of what he was doing, but I think it was more about just looking for the right chord tones without the vernacular, without the grammar to know, you know what I'm saying?
Right? Without analyzing each separate move
Just,
and
yeah,
patching tone. Yeah.
just listening and being like, oh, I think this will be a fun sound. And I think that's where all the looking for literally different sounds.
Right.
Not just playing the guitar the same way that you're supposed to conventionally play the guitar. You know, it's like that experimental thing, that childlike experimentation on the instrument leads to better playing and better musicianship versus taking and doing that in every key that moves up a minor third for like 6 hours a day. You're basically only going to get good at playing that.
That is so interesting you say that. A lot of the players that you have associated with, you know, throughout your camps or your clinics or just in the professional world ascribe to that paradigm. And they still get really good. Like, for one, you mentioned Paul Gilbert. Now, I remember having his instructional videos back in the day where he would tell you to do the...
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, I can kind of play that, but how do I move on? Yeah. Right. Exactly. You just did it. So, and Steve Vai was the same way, where he had this regimented practice plan where he played the modes in all 12 keys, and then he would play the intervals like you just did. And, you know, and then you'd play fourths and then fifths. And it's just like, oh my gosh. So what gives?
Yeah. So where did it come off the rails is because Steve Vai was practicing and subscribing to creativity
right
in his own time. I believe that, because how do you get passion in warfare? How do you get flexible without treating the creative moment and looking for the sound and looking for these weird sounds and these weird effects to make something happen? Versus when that era was happening, I'm a big believer in a lot of these guys were learning to teach after they could play. So they were formalizing things that could be put into print, because magazines were everywhere, that could be put into REH licks. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Versus like when you watch the Sean Lane video, which is one of my favorites, the black.
Yes.
That one.
Sean Lane, that guy was a trailblazer. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very fragmented to watch him teach. You can tell that teaching is not a thing, and they're like, okay, he played this, let's transcribe it and put it in the book that comes with it. And you could tell that like his teaching was very not refined. It wasn't because he got to where he was by a different way. And then he was like put into an environment where they're like, hey, you're Sean Lane, you should do a video. Does that make sense? Like they got put into a teaching environment versus not being teachers first. You know, they were like players first, you know?
Very good.
Mason was another one. Like it's very fragmented. Like when you watch the Brent one. Yeah. He's like, one of the great answers he gives is one of my favorite quotes. He's like, I don't know, man. I'm just kind of popping and flipping them strings. He's like, wow, dude, you just really got there from listening to music and Gary Reed and looking for a sound and listen. Like when I think of Brent, it's like if Jerry Reed and George Benson just like merged and like made this like super telly player that can do all this bop stuff. Like that's where he lives. And you can tell that he probably listened to a boatload of Benson and probably listened to a boatload of Jerry Reed. You know what I mean? Without even having to read an interview with him for him to tell you that, you know?
That's so true. Absolutely. I love that.
He really knows. I mean, to be a fly on the wall in some of these people's careers, I'd love to know the real answers behind it, you know?
All right. That's beautiful. Okay, let's rewind a little bit. You mentioned earlier, I don't want to drop this because you mentioned it, and I would love to hear more about it. And for all those nerdy guitar players out there like us, your Patreon deal. Tell us about that.
So Patreon has been a cool platform for me because there's two things that social media has done since it's got really big. One is it doesn't allow everyone who's to subscribe to you to see your content. Like you can have 100,000 followers on Instagram, and when you post a video, only a fraction of those followers will actually see it, right? Crazy. Versus Patreon, which is it is a subscription, paid subscription, but everyone who pays to get in the door sees everything you post. That's super valuable, right? So I do at a $5 tier, you get access to all the Patreon exclusive videos. They can range all over the place. Like lesson stuff, gear stuff. I have over 250 videos on there. That's for that tier. At $10, you get that plus access to our private Discord server. The same thing with Facebook, right? It got so big that like you can't really communicate without it just like sometimes missing something. Discord is a way that I can provide a platform for everyone in my Patreon to chat and not feel like the public is on them. And like, for instance, if they want to post videos of them that maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable posting on Instagram or Facebook, but they want feedback, like it's created a really cool environment. So you get that at the $10 tier. At the $25 tier, you get access to our weekly Zoom masterclasses. And those run for about 2 hours, Q&A. Like sometimes I'll just put on backing tracks and do like a little concert or whatever. Like it's really fun. We'll put on, like when the new Steve Lukather record came out, we listened to it as a group and like paused it and did moments like, oh, just let's transcribe that lick real quick. You know, there's a lot of that kind of thing. And then at the higher tiers, the 50 and the 100, basically it allows you to control the content that comes out on my channels. So like if you're at one of the big boy tiers, the 100, that means like, Andy, do a Woodshed episode on this topic. And, hey, no problem. Like it's essentially allowing people and subscribers to gain that next level of access that typically only comes with, you know, guitar lessons. And I mean, if you want to take a lesson from me, it's great, but it's expensive. You know, to buy me for an hour is not the cheapest way to do.
What's your hourly rate?
$150.
Okay. Yeah, I'm the same. I do the same thing. So I totally get it.
Universal. Yeah. But for $100 a month, you get Discord, you get 4 Zoom live masterclasses. It's like really, it's the better deal.
It is.
And it's because I want to, I really want to be a community hub and it not be about, oh, here's Andy's thing that he's going to give us every week. We're going to get a new transcription, a new tab. It's like, man, it's not like that. Like it's a community hub. Yes, there's tabs. Yes, there's backing tracks. There's all the things that you want, but that's almost like a side dish. The main course is the exclusivity. It's the community. It's like, hey, Andy, what are you up to today? What video game you play? Man, what are you listening to today? And then we'll just take the topic and run with it, you know? Hey,
I love
what
it.
page are you on? You know, stuff like that. And that creates an environment for the people in Patreon to interact with each other.
Right. I love it. Now, I just went there. So listeners, patreon.com//Andy Wood Music. Really simple. I love the naming, the branding. The $5 per month is called Guitar Cable. The $10 is Stomp Box. The $25 is Combo Amp. Now we're ramping up. The $50 is Full Stack. And here we go. You ready? Drum roll, please. The $100 per month is Monster Rig of Doom.
Yeah, that's the Bradshaw switcher and the wet, dry, wet. And
I love it, man. I love it. Now, for those of you who don't know what Andy said, us guitar nerds, again, especially out here in the LA session scene, there was a guy named Bob Bradshaw, and he would build these giant rack rigs, those half refrigerators and the full refrigerator racks that you see. That was the nickname they gave him. Well, Bradshaw built these rigs for all of the best players from Eddie Van Halen on down. And then when Andy also just said wet, dry, wet, what he means is a cabinet with your wet affected signal on the left, a dry cabinet with no effects in the middle, and then another wet cabinet on the right with all
a different time. So
with a different time.
Yeah, the classic thing would be like the 300, 500, 350.
Yes.
Yeah, like those. Hey, man, I still use those numbers to this day. Like when I go into a session, I'll do 350, 500, or 375, 500, anywhere in that range to where it'll dotted eighth against itself, and about the third repeat they'll line up together, and that's when that's how I mix it. It's like when the third hits, that's the last one you hear. And it allows you, here's the thing that I've discovered is like, if you're recording in a DAW to a song that's, you know, tempo locked, like you've got 120 BPM, and you turn on your stock Logic delay, the delay will be at 120 BPM. And as long as no other instruments are playing, you have delay. Mm-hmm. The problem is, here's where it gets tricky. The moment you have a drummer, that delay is going to fall on a kick or a snare or a hi-hat or something. And that delay, you have to crank it up so loud to cut through the mix. When you use numbers that aren't tempo locked to the DAW, you can have less mix and hear the delay more.
That's right.
Right. And so it's been a great tool for me over the years in building depth without turning into mush. You know, the guitar could still punch through, but you've got that width and that stereo image and that like, oh man, I'm in an arena kind of feel without it being just soaked. You know what I mean?
I love that. And for those of you listening who don't know exactly what he means, you can do more. Just do a Google search on delay and how to use delay for guitars or in the studio, and it'll go more in depth. And I love it when you say those numbers, so you can really dial in those sounds. I mean, what I love here is that everything we're talking about, you can do a deep dive search online, you know.
Yeah.
But we're getting the you know, the overview here. So moving right along, I love the Patreon, I love the Woodshed, and then you told us how you practiced and how you came up. Now I want to talk about how the hell did you become a career guitarist, a career musician? Because that is something that I, you know, obviously I'm a huge, you know, supporter and proponent of. We make a living out of playing music. Now, there's two sides to that. Some people look at us and say, wow, you're so lucky. That's amazing. I can't believe you get to do that. And they're right. It's a blessing, right? My father always used to say it's a blessing and a curse. The downside is, well, sometimes you just don't know where that next gig, that next check is coming from.
That's right.
So talk about how you transitioned from being that little mandolin flat picker bluegrass guy into like this budding, huge, you know, guitar force of a career musician.
Man, you know, I came up playing in theaters in Pigeon Forge in my teenage years. So Pigeon Forge is like Branson, Pigeon Forge. They're like Vegas without the gambling. You know what I mean? So you get the casino style shows, usually owned by big famous people. Like Dolly Parton owns most of the ones in Pigeon Forge, right? So I was playing in those as a teenager, and at night I would finish my evening show at Dixie Stampede or Country Tonight or Old Smoky Hoedown or wherever it was, and then after that I would go out and play in bars and clubs. I mean, I was learning trial by fire. Like I really loved playing in clubs, and like I was going into college, man, I was clubbing 5 nights a week, anywhere that I could get on stage and play and learn, and you know, it amassed that catalog of having to know 400 songs. Like, I mean, if you wanted to go work, you had to know a ton of songs, because you might do a country gig on Wednesday, that's 60 country tunes. You might do a rock gig, you might do a frat party at UT on Saturday afternoon, and you need to know, Rocky Top plus 40 other songs. You know what I mean?
Wow, yeah.
So that was really far more important in my retrospective than I realized at the time. At the time, I was just happy to get out and be playing guitar and like hopefully the chicks dig it. You know what I mean? Kind of, it's like, you're a 19-year-old kid, you know. But the transition came when I was in a rock band called Down From Up. We were, trying to find our footing, opening on tours for bands like Seven Dust and 10 Years and things like that. And so I got a good look at the inside of a van touring across the country and like what that world was all about. And there was a producer in town in Knoxville that would give me a lot of sessions. He was helping me, His name is Travis Wyrick, and he has a great studio. He's recorded, POD and Pillar and Disciple and all that kind of stuff. And he would always throw me a bone and be like, hey, man, I think he saw something in me, and was, this is how we're going to do this. This is what it's like to get in a, and he really gave me like that true growing, that chance when I was young. And from there, so much of where I'm at, me and Tom Quell and Martin Miller and all those guys, we're cusp generation on the internet, right? So we all were practicing and making videos before Facebook even was a thing. And we were on Petrucci Forum and chatting with each other there. And then Instagram and all that stuff blew up, right? So like our careers were right before that, like how many subscribers do you have kind of mentality, right? Like, so my networking came from more of the old school, which was like the being on tour with Seven Dust and, Clint and those guys, just like they liked my playing. You know what I mean? We would be opening and they would, hey man, you sound great tonight, great tone, great chops, or whatever. And so I got a call one time from a guy named Danny that was putting on a benefit for, I can't, who was it? It was a bass player, for the Deftones, and I can't recall his name right now, but he was in a car wreck, and it was a fundraiser for medical bills and things like that, and it was this gig where they had so-and-so from Breaking Benjamin, so-and-so from Seven Dust, so-and-so from blah, and they needed a house guitar player to cycle when the guy that was famous wasn't the guitar player. So Danny's like, hey man, will you be like the kind of the stunt guitar player? I was like, sure, that sounds awesome. This would be great. So got to play with some guys. One of the guys I got to play with was the drummer at the time for Breaking Benjamin and Black Label Society. And he had a gig. He was on the band. He was the first guy hired for Scott Stapp when Alter Bridge and Scott Stapp, or when not Alter Bridge, when Creed and Scott went their separate ways. Scott did a record with Howard Benson, producer in L.A., and Proof of Life, and they were going to do a tour or whatever, and Chad was on that tour. So Chad was like, hey, man, would you be interested in playing guitar on this tour? I was like, yeah, sounds great. So that was my first, like, really A-list kind of tour.
Yeah.
And then from there, word of mouth and the internet were both moving at the same time. So it was before the numerics became a thing, and it's before there were Mountain Dew and F-150 ads everywhere. It was back when Facebook was like for college kids, you know what I mean? So word of mouth and all that stuff was forming at the same time, and you and I met, and Mark and I met, and Travis Toy and I met at Guitar Summit as well. Travis Toy was playing steel with Rascal Flatts, been playing with him for years, and when Rascal Flatts decided to change out some members of the band, everybody in the remaining band got to pick a guy to come in and audition. And Travis picked me to come in and audition. And so the audition went really well, and I've worked for those guys on and off for years, and worked now when Gary's the lead singer, he's doing a solo career. I'm the guitar player for it, and that's where we are today. So like that's like, now there's plenty of artists in between. I worked with Locash, worked with, you know, Gary Allan, like all kinds of different artists in between. But that's like the long and short of how I got from point A to point B. It was very grassroots in a lot of ways, and just going out and beating the clubs up, you know.
Okay, see, that's why I love asking this question, because it usually comes down to that. And what I try to teach people is that it's all relationship based. It's always going to be word of mouth. And as long as you're a good person and you're responsible and reliable and organized and on time, and you can play the music and you do your homework and you're a fun hang, it's going to happen. Because I know a lot of people, sometimes they get anxiety about it. They want it to happen so bad and they just don't know what to do. So I want that to be a word of encouragement from Andy and from all the others on this podcast and myself. Just do you, be you, and be great, and it's gonna happen organically, right?
Again, loving it. Just love the journey.
Yes.
Right. And sometimes, and I'm not gonna lie, like I've been frustrated at times where I was just like, man, well, you know, when we gonna get this big break with Down From Up? Hey man, that wasn't my path. I didn't see it at the time. You know what I mean? Like we got almost there. We were like in the label talks, and we were right there. And I was bummed when we weren't going to step into that new thing, but I didn't realize that I had this whole world waiting on the other side. You know what I mean?
There you go.
And, you know, you can never force the opportunity. Like, you can never force fate to give you that chance at an audition. But what you can control is your own brand. The most powerful thing we all have in today's digital world is our own brand. I can't be the next Steve Morse. I can't be the next Eddie Van Halen, but I can be the best Andy Wood on the planet. Like I can do my thing really well. And that's really the thing we have to step out. And to quote Steve Vai, one of my favorite quotes he's ever said, he said, "The best way to sound like me is to sound like you." And I was like, it's like, yeah, that's it. Because, you know, as a guy that I've played a lot of genres, and on my earlier records, you know, the songs are like, all right, here's the chicken picking song that's really fast, and, you know, and here's the more fusion-y stuff. And then on my newest record, you know, it's like it's blended together. There's a lot less of that fragmentation. It's like all the styles kind of sit. And that's where I'm trying to carve my own path and be my own me. And that's the most important thing any of you viewers can do, is look at, like, what do you sound like? What is the music in your head that's playing before you play an instrument? That's where you walk. Chase that.
I love that. Okay, I love that. So good. Such inspiring words of wisdom, and it's so true. And I know sometimes people say, "Man, that's not what I wanted to hear." Well, it's the truth. So sit with it, and it'll bite you one day. You'll be like, "Oh, now I get it." The light bulb will go off. Now, I want to park somewhere else real quick. Let's talk about auditions, because you mentioned the audition with Rascal Flatts went really well. Again, auditions perhaps aren't as they're not traditional in the sense as they used to be. When I did my stint,
They do not. like it's shifted so much in Nashville. I don't know what it's like in LA, but the Nashville scene, it's gone. Like from even when I auditioned, that archetype does not exist anymore.
I'm so glad you said that. I remember when I auditioned in Nashville. I lived in Nashville for 8 years, and I did a couple auditions. We would go to SIR on Cherry Lane, and
Yeah.
and we just, you walk in the room, and there's a line of people, and you have to wait, and they bring you in.
And be like, hey, we're all here for the same gig. Like
Yeah.
you can't get mad at it.
And it was the same way here in LA at Center Staging, right here in Burbank, where I live. We call them cattle call. There's just a line of cats waiting to go in. I did the same thing, Babyface. That's how I got the gig. I did it for countless others. But like you said, that archetype doesn't exist anymore. So shed some light there.
Yeah.
Tell us what you did to be prepared.
Okay. I'll tell you a fun story about the Flatts thing specifically, then we'll shed some light. My audition went really well. I didn't realize that Jodan actually had one of my solo records before I went in. So I was like, I was like, oh man, well, he told me, he's like, man, I love you playing. He goes, whether or not you get the gig, I love you. I was like, hey man, today's a win. If you know that your name is in the circle, if I had not got that gig, he could have been a referral to a gig that I could have got. So that's, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't ever think that if you don't get the gig you're auditioning for that you failed. Your name's in the loop. And maybe that wasn't where you're supposed to be, but now you're being, leave a good impression. So what's funny is the rehearsals went really bad. My first 2 days of rehearsals were really, really bad. Those records have walls of guitar. It's Dan Huff produced. If you don't know Dan Huff's playing, go get wrecked. Go get Giant, put on Time to Burn, and then check your ego at the door because he's a monster. On top of that, he produces and he loves the layering and all that stuff. On top of that, Jodan's a great guitar player. So it's just guitar, guitar, guitar. So when I went in for the first couple of days, I had learned, they didn't give us stems to work from. You know what I'm saying? They didn't give us the stems to the sessions. They just like, hey, download this on Spotify. We'll play this one.
Yeah, that's a lot harder.
Hey, it's super hard because when there's 4 guitar parts, the one you learn is not the one they want to hear. They're like, no, you don't play with that. I was like, which part? Oh, God. By day 3, we had got halfway through the set, and it had shifted into because I was playing utility on the gig. I was playing like mandolin and bouzouki and acoustic. By day 3, we were doing What Hurts the Most and Mayberry and these songs where I was like, there's one big acoustic guitar part. I know which one I'm supposed to play. So, we got in stride, over that first couple of weeks. But yeah, it's funny how, one thing can go really well. And then over the next couple of days, you're trying to find your footing because you walk into a lot of times you walk into a scenario where they've had the same guy for 9 years. And they don't realize that they're used to hearing him do this one specific part, and who knows where that even started because they've been playing it for 9 years. Like, who knows why that part was even, you don't know. You know what I'm saying? You never know a family's back history. So when you're a new guy, it's like being the new stepdad. It's like, hey, let's go throw the ball in the yard.
What do you want to do, kids? Yeah.
Yeah, so, but luckily, props to Jim Riley for riding me really hard those first couple of days, and then also for helping it level out later on, and here we are still to this day working together, which is really, really a great wholesome kind of thing to say.
Now that's awesome. That is. But hold on, I want to park there again because I really like what you just said. Jim was riding you really hard.
Yeah.
Now, a musician, look, creative types with our egos sometimes. If you don't have your ego in check, that could have went a whole nother way.
Oh, it hurts. Like, let me tell you what, it hurts.
Yeah, expound on that. Yeah.
We'll shed some light on what my perspectives over the Nashville audition thing right after this too.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts when you have a guy. Here's the thing too, people sleep on how good musicians all 3 guys in Rascal Flatts are. Like Jay, who is the piano player and bass player, the black-headed Flat. Dude, he produces Chicago records. So when he wants an inversion, he knows exactly. He's like, put this on the bottom. I want these chords. Like, it's not a game. And people sleep on it because, pop country has got a reputation of the artists not having, the chops of the musicians, really. Like, say it like it is. But it ain't like that in that band. You know what I mean? Like, and I've always said, Rascal Flatts doesn't need anybody. Those 3 guys can go out on an arena stage with an acoustic guitar and piano and play for 90 minutes and not need a soul. So anybody on that stage, better bring it and is happy to be there. You know what I mean? Because it's just a higher level. That's fun. Like when everybody's great, like I always say, I want to be the worst musician in the band. If I'm the worst musician in the band, it's going to be a good gig. We're going to have a good time. You know what I mean?
Learning so much. Yeah.
Going to be good. So now back to the cattle call thing. I think a lot of that has gone away with the fact that, and I can only speak for the Southeast and Nashville and stuff, but like the fact that now labels will just get online when an artist needs a guitar player and just look at numerics. And I think that's cool in some instances, and I think it doesn't work in others. In an instance where I think it works, let's say you have an image that you want for your band. You want a female guitar player. Like, that's the other thing. Keep your ego in check. Mm-hmm. If they're looking for, you know, like a soulful James Brown, you know, all black band, I know that I'm not in the running. Like, I got the beard, and it's like, hey, man, that don't hurt my feelings. You know what I mean? If Michael Jackson is looking for a female guitar player, I don't have a chance. I can't play good enough to be a female. It doesn't work that way. So keeping your ego in check there, and then looking at it from the label side. They're looking for an image. They're building a brand, and that brand has to walk on stage with Gwen Stefani. That's what they're after. So in that instance, you can go through Instagram and your hot guitar players and be like, ooh, they look good on stage. Let's get them in a room. I think that's a good thing because it helps you. You have to keep in mind, you got to look at it from the label side, from the producer side, from the artist side, the hiring, the people that are cutting the check. You know, respect that because you could be there one day.
That's right.
You could have a great career as a session player and then end up like Dan Huff, and now you're the producer, and now the label's calling you to ask you who we need to get hired to play on the road gig. So always respect the fact that there's another perspective, and they're looking for something specific. Where I don't think social media works is basing something on, well, they've only got 5,800 subscribers. You know, are they really what we're looking for? And I'm just like, yo, Brent Mason's played on more #1 singles than he has followers. So just don't
trip.
Don't trip because, you know, you don't, you know, it's like some people just may not pursue social media. That's you know, right. And you can inflate the numbers. Like we live in an era of Kardashianification where you can buy your followers and do the things and you can inflate your numbers. And
I like that. I like that verb you just created.
I didn't create it. That's from Bonamassa. And I don't even know if he created it. I think that's like, I don't think anybody gets to claim that at this point.
I like that verb you just used. Thanks, Bonamassa.
Yeah. So, but that's the reality. Yeah. And in today's world, I don't think it works when you judge somebody's playing from an Instagram clip because I've seen Instagram clips where my mind is blown, and then in the corner of the video, the guitar doesn't have an input jack. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like I'm just implying that, you know, there's plenty of miming, there's plenty of playing alongs, there's plenty of people playing something that has been recorded and they're playing too. So it's like I don't think it works there. You have to get the cat in the room with the artist. Sure. You know what I mean? You have to hear his amp. That amp sounds different than this amp, than that amp, and this amp. And like, depending on which gig I need to go to, I need to make sure I've got bringing the right thing to the job. You know what I mean? And so all of that goes together. And so sometimes social media is amazing and it can help you get gigs. It has helped me get gigs. It's helped me expand. On other times, it's not amazing because there is artificial things.
Yeah, hyperbole. Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, Photoshop is real. You know?
Yeah.
Perfect. You can't hate the game. That's
it is.
It is.
But you said the magic word, the B word, brand. And if the label is building the brand, then you have to respect that. But you also said this too, and I love this. And listen up, folks. Build your own brand. Now is the perfect time to do it. And it's so funny because I'm building the brand with the Career Musician and Nomad, and I've been working on it. And you know what? I might be making mistakes. I'm sure I'm making mistakes. I don't even have a lot of followers. I'm learning, I'm building, and guess what? I'm doing it organically. And when I look at Andy's sites, when I go to andywoodmusic.com, I got to give it to you, brother. Kudos. You've built your brand. You've done it well. And it's there. The brand is tried and true. And don't get all you listeners out there who are aspiring and really want to, quote unquote, make it or get on in the business. Don't get upset. Don't get jealous. Don't get anxious. Don't get bitter. Just get to work.
Just do the work. Just do work. You know, I made tons of mistakes coming up. I'll make plenty of more before I die. You know, that's just the nature of it. You can't bat 1,000.
That's right.
You just want to keep your RBI really high. You know what I mean? Keep it high. And when I think about branding, this is the thing everyone needs to keep in mind too. There is a point where your brand will be more powerful than the gig. And I am very blessed to say that now I'm at a point where I only take the gigs that I want to.
Yes.
I don't have to take the 200 dates a year, you know, grind tours. Not that there's not good money there, but you're never home. You know what I mean? It's like, that's the thing. But now I can take the gigs that I want and take the tours that I want. And then when I'm not doing that, it's like, man, I have the choice to just work on my own stuff. And it's like, that's what I want to work on. Like, we've had a great year, some really cool product development. The signature Sirs are back ordered for 9 months, and the Wampler gearbox pedal that we just did, and the Sir Woodshed comp pedal, like, I'm really proud of the product lines we've done, and those are killing it. And those open opportunities. That's another lane. It's like, now it's like you develop a product. It's like, yeah, man, you've got an opportunity to go do clinics, promote that product, and again, you have to build your own brand if you want to do that, because what are you going to go do? Go play covers at you know what I mean? It's like, if you're going to go promote yourself, have your own tunes, have your own sound. You've got to be your own thing. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't want to hear, you go see Eric Johnson, you want to hear Cliffs of Dover. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's why you're there, baby. You know?
Yeah, you don't want to hear him play a cover, an Eddie Van Halen cover. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, it's a treat when a guy like that does a cover. Like,
that's a special
Hendrix cover.
Yeah,
like, I've heard him do like Spanish Castle stuff. It's like, it's a treat to get that. You know what I mean? But you're there for, like, you know, Desert Rose and Highlandrins and Manhattan and all the signature EJ tunes. Like, that's why you're there. That's the thing. That's the magic. And so if you build your brand strong enough, that dependence on the artist gig and the studio sessions becomes less. And that's a very great place to be, because you could be working for a female artist and be making fat money, and all of a sudden she's like, I want to have a baby. We're not going to tour for a year and a half. And you're just like, oh, snap. Or, right? Or not to get too dark, but like, COVID can happen that none of us planned on. Hey, now nobody's touring. Now Live Nation shut the door. Like, it's off. And we're just now starting to creep back into it. And it's been interesting to watch, because a lot of these people, from the biggest of the bigs, the Live Nations, to the small little mom and pops venues, nobody wants to see it shut down again. So everybody's being real careful about how we get back into it. But if your brand is strong, you can weather the storm using the tools at your disposal. Like, you guys got to understand, man, Twitter is free, baby. Instagram costs no dollar paper.
That's right.
You know? And you look at it, if you're going to spend 10 grand on studio gear, you better spend at least half that on your website.
That's right.
Because what happens if the platform goes away, Nomad? Hey, let me say this. MySpace. When's the last time any of y'all got on that thing? The platform went away. And now Facebook is looked at as like, oh, no, that's what mom and dad are on. I don't use Facebook. Guess what, man? None of those platforms are permanent. But your own domain, your own website, your own hub, as long as you pay the domain fee, that's yours.
That's amen.
And that's powerful, dude. That is powerful.
I love that. So I'm a true believer in delegation and bringing people on your team and in your camp and paying them for what they're really good at.
Value it, man. You value that $5,000 Les Paul, don't you? This is just another tool.
That's right. That's right. You got to love it. So, wow, Andy, you've had so many great little nuggets of wisdom here, and from your own experience. I love it. It's perfect. And this is a little different for me. I've been thinking about this. I've never posted on you. We have a YouTube channel, The Career Musician, and we only post the audio versions of the interviews. But I would like to post this video, because we did some noodling around, and I want to ask, are you down to do a jam?
Yeah, I don't know how we can do it with latency, but I'll try my best.
I'll play in and out of the pockets, you know. One more thing, though. Once again, everybody can find you at andywoodmusic.com and the Patreon /AndyWoodMusic, right? Yep. Anything else you'd like to say about, you kind of just did, success, words of wisdom to those aspiring to get to where you are?
Just love it, man. That's the secret. If you don't love it like that, then you don't have to chase it as a career. Don't feel pressured. But if you're in it for the long haul, you got to make sure that you stay inspired. And the best way to do that is play your favorite songs, man. Don't forget that, like, the reason you picked up guitar was Crazy Train. You know what I mean? Or like whatever. Or My Girl. You know what I mean? And for me, it's fiddle tunes. Like, if I start feeling bad, man, I just go back. I go back to where I came from. You know what I mean? And that keeps me kind of grounded, you know, in all of it. And like, you know, like the Van Halen thing. When a guy asked me the other day on Patreon, I was like, I don't know how to tell you to do this. Let me do it in real time. Let me show you how I practice in real time. So I've just opened up right now, started transcribing. You know what I mean?
I love it. I love that, man. Wow. I love it. Andy Wood, ladies and gentlemen, shredder to the stars and himself, mostly.